Hi, I'm Quentin Tarantino, and welcome to the new Rolling Thunder video release. The film you're about to see is Beat Takashi's Sonatine, which he directed, wrote, produced, edited, and is the star of. And we were really proud to release it here in America. Actually, the film that you're about to see has played all over the world and has gotten quite a bit of acclaim in all the different festivals it played and everything. And the film is actually has made Beat Takashi one of the most exciting directors to come out of Japan in the last decade. And I think when you see the movie, you'll understand why. It's a slightly different take on the standard Yakuza film. I'm going to be here after the film is over to kind of talk about what Yakuza films are and what his are in particular, and just talk a little bit more about the man and just kick it. Anyway, in the meantime, enjoy Sonatine, and I'll see you after the movie. Okay, bye-bye. Hi, I'm Quentin Tarantino, and welcome to the outro for Sonatine. Now let me describe a little bit about the man you just saw, Beat Takashi, about his career, kind of catch you up to date with Sonatine. Beat Takashi is a very successful actor in Japan, and if he looks familiar, you might have seen him in the movie Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, with David Bowie and Tom Conti. He played the Japanese prison guard, and in fact has the very last line of the movie, which is the title of the film, Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. He had a very successful career in Japan, one of their most popular actors. But he was primarily known as a comedian, all right? Not like Michael Keaton, but that's kind of a close equivalent to some degree. And so after a certain point, he decided he wanted to direct a film. And the film that he directed was a cop film. All right, it was sort of like his own variation on a Dirty Harry kind of story. The Japanese title was This Man is Violent, and the English language title is Violent Cop. And it's quite a out there, rough piece of film, I'll tell you. And think about it. Think of Michael Keaton's actor doing the kind of movies he does, and nothing wrong with that. And they're great, and he's a terrific talent. All right, and then all of a sudden he decided to direct a movie, and the movie he did was the most violent movie that came out that year, with him the most psychotic cop you could ever want to see. Well, that was what Beat Takashi did, and it kind of just shocked everybody. And now what you have to understand is Sonatine is the third in a line of a crime film trilogy that he did. The first one was Violent Cop, where he played this wild, dirty, Harry kind of guy. The second film was a film called Boiling Point, all right, which he plays one of the scariest gangster villain characters probably since Dennis Hopper in Blue Velvet. I mean, he's like genuinely scary in the film. You're always scared when you're around him, for like the fear of the violence is just going to explode from him. It's a very good piece, and it's a really excellent portrayal on his part. Then after Boiling Point, he took a break from the crime films that he had been doing and did a film which I don't believe there is an English title for it, and I'm not quite aware of the Japanese title. I'm really sorry, all you purists out there. But it's a very minimalistic comedy about a Japanese surfer, this Japanese kid who just really wants to be a badass Tokyo surfer, and it's a lot of fun. It's a really nice change of pace. And then after that film, he came back to the crime films with this film, Sonatine, which I feel is his masterpiece. It's just terrific. And the first two films were wonderful, but they all really kind of led the way to Sonatine. To some degree, semi-similar to the way the Leone's Dollars pictures kind of built on each last one. One thing you need to know about the Japanese Yakuza film is it's a long-standing genre in Japan. The Yakuza or Yakuza is the Japanese equivalent of the mob. And just like, we've always had gangster pictures with Bogart and Cagney, and gangster pictures with The Godfather and Scorsese with Mean Streets, and then Scorsese with Goodfellas in the 80s. They've always had Yakuza pictures. The Yakuza films changed drastically in the early 70s when the director Kinji Fukasaku, who did the film Black Lizard, which you might have seen, and he also directed the Japanese segments of Tora Tora Tora, the best segments in the movie. Did a Yakuza film called Fight Without Jingi. Now, the word jingi is a very special word in Japanese. There actually isn't an American equivalent for it. The closest equivalent would be honor, but jingi is something more than that. It's like a higher place of honor. Honor just doesn't quite cover it. I always joke because there's certain things about my movies that Japanese audiences actually get far more than American audiences ever get. Like, for example, I've had Americans come up to me and say at the end of Reservoir Dogs, why does Mr. Orange tell Mr. White he's a cop when all he has to do is just keep his mouth shut for the next minute and he's going to live through this? No Japanese audience would ever ask that question. They know why he's saying it. And it's one of those things where if you don't know, maybe you've liked my movie and I appreciate that, but you kind of didn't get it. But basically, why Mr. Orange tells Mr. White he's a cop is jingi. That's more or less what jingi is. Now, Kinshi Fukasaku's film Fight Without Jingi set off a different style of Yakuza film. You know, there is no sentimentality about it. It was all rough, and it was all harsh, and it was all just violent, and, you know, there was no romanticism about it at all right? And that's created an entirely new wave of Yakuza films that pretty much kind of stands to this day. Which brings us now to what Beat Takashi did with them when he did Sonatine. Basically, something has happened in Japan where the main movie-going audience who decides to see a film is the women, either the wife or the girlfriend, which actually is not too different from the way it used to be in America in the 30s and 40s. I've heard Orson Welles talk about that it was, you know, it was the woman at home reading Film Fun and everything and saying, hey, let's go see the new Tyrone Power movie. And they were the ones that kind of picked the movie, and the husband and boyfriend kind of just went along. Well, that's the case that exists right now in Japan. So the Yakuza films haven't been doing well, and the samurai films haven't been doing well. What does well there is stuff like Milo and Otis, and you know, dog pictures do really well there, and any kind of romantic kind of thing. It has, I mean, literally, when they release a film in Japan, it has to be geared towards a female audience. Like the way things have to be geared towards a 19-year-old audience in America, they has to be geared toward a female audience. So even if there's like a tiny little bit of romance in a movie, it'll be a big thing on the poster of, you know, looks like Gone with the Wind. So in this environment, Pete Takashi came out with these 3 cut-your-head-off films of full-on brutality, all right, which was, you know, kind of blew everyone's mind, all right? And oddly enough, you know, actually, maybe not oddly enough, these films actually didn't do that well in Japan. They got a tremendous amount of press. He was extremely, he was, you know, taken as one of the most exciting directors to emerge in Japan in the last decade. But box office-wise, they only did okay. But his take on the Yakuza film is a little, you know, it's similar to some degree. I mean, you could make the parallel, and many critics have, I'm not just saying this, many critics have, make the parallel between his film with the Yakuza film and Reservoir Dogs with the standard gangster films that people had seen up until that point. And where really, you know, bears weight is the way that in Reservoir Dogs, which was a standard heist picture, where we concentrated everything on the, you know, the rendezvous scene, you know, where they divide up the money, which is normally like a 10-minute scene, you know, in most heist pictures. Well, we're going to spend the entire time there. Well, that's kind of more or less the same kind of, you know, taking a genre and taking one part of it and putting that one part under a microscope. That's pretty much what Beat Takashi does with Sonatine in this film. The guys go to help out the neighboring family. They get into a big massacre, and they got to hide the guys out on this like remote little island, wait for things to cool down. And then the rest of the movie is just hanging around in that little island as these guys are kind of bored and have to kill time, and then just what happens after that. And it was the first film I had seen since I had been doing my take on gangster pictures that I was like, oh wow, this guy's kind of after the same thing I'm after. Now, if you saw the Chungking Express video, I said something like that about Wong Kar-wai, but it was more like about where Wong Kar-wai is coming from as far as his style and his, I don't know, je ne sais quoi. But as far as with Beat Takashi, it truly is, he's actually kind of going down the exact same road I'm going in his own Japanese Beat Takashi way. And it's like, it's his, and he's actually much more of a minimalist than I am, which is, again, one of the things I love about his work. And just the whole scene with the Russian roulette scene is one of the most funny and surprisingly shocking scenes I've ever seen. And I think that's a true masterpiece scene. But this was just like a bracing bucket of cold water in the face of the Japanese film industry and Yakuza films. And the critics loved it. It was really funny. When I went down to Japan for the first time to publicize Reservoir Dogs, the first thing, and none of them had really kind of played outside of Japan by this time as of yet, that much. The whole thing was like, oh, what do you think of Beat Takashi? What do you think of Beat Takashi? Reservoir Dogs reminds us of one of his kind of films. So the film's played all over the world, has gotten all kinds of acclaim. Beat Takashi is actually the first Japanese filmmaker in maybe a decade to kind of make a big break from Japan onto the world film scene. And so we were just really proud to finally get it. So you can actually see it here in America, with the right subtitles, and we're just real proud of it. Also, one of the interesting thing is Beat Takashi is such a star in Japan that he was cast as one of the bad guys in the film Johnny Mnemonic with Keanu Reeves. But some Japanese money went into the making of Johnny Mnemonic. And so one of the things about it was they said, okay, we're going to put some money in the film, but you have to film 15 more additional minutes with Beat Takashi for the Japanese market. So if you see like a Japanese import of Johnny Mnemonic and everything, it's like there's going to be a lot more Beat Takashi scenes because he's so famous there, which I get a big kick out of. I still haven't seen that kind of there from him, so I'd like to see that someday. So that is it for this edition of Rolling Thunder Video. I hope you enjoyed Sonatine. And the next film we've got coming out after this is a blaxploitation film from the mid-'70s called Detroit 9000, which the ad line in the newspapers when it came out was filmed in the murder capital of the USA, Detroit, Michigan. And it stars Harry Rhodes and Alex Rocco and Vanetta McGee, and is directed by Arthur Marks, who artists such terrific films as Monkey Hustle and Bucktown. So anyway, until next time with Detroit 9000, this is Quentin Tarantino, and thanking you for watching Rolling Thunder Video.